At this moment, the greatest threats come from the Middle East and North Africa, where radical groups exploit grievances for their own gain. And one of those groups is ISIL, which calls itself the Islamic State. Now let's make two things clear. ISIL is not Islamic. No religion condones the killing of innocents. The vast majority of ISIL's victims have been Muslim. And ISIL is certainly not a state. It was formerly Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Iraq and has taken advantage of sectarian strife and Syria's civil war, gained territory on both sides of the Iraq-Syrian border.
One question that Christians, I think, in North America wonder about is whether you find, as a Christian living in a Muslim country, as someone raised Muslim yourself, whether what we call radical Islam is simply consistent Islam. Of course, we know that there are horrible chapters in Christian history, but that we could argue that's inconsistent with the New Testament, whereas it seems, at least superficially, to many of us, when we read what we have of the Quran or the Hadith or Sunnah, that actually they are following Muhammad's example when they walk into a playground with dynamite strapped to their chest. What could you say to Western Christians to help us be, A, not naive, but also not to overreact, so that we can bear witness to Christ to our Muslim friends?
Islam, there is only one Islam, and it's not radical, it's not mild or moderate.
We can't put it in Western Christian categories.
Yes. As Christians, when we talk about missions, we mean to go and tell other nations about what Christ has done, and we bring them to the church and minister them with the Word of God and bring them to the sacraments. Now, Muslims' missions, understanding of missions, I would say that the word missions does not exist in Islam. But the closest word to missions is jihad. Jihad is not necessarily war, as it's mentioned a lot in the media in America. Jihad is expansion of Islam by any means possible. It could be by means of war, by means of giving Qurans to different nations, different people, Americans, or by means of deception. They use any means possible. There's a book called Jihad in the West by Paul Fregosi, Jihad in the West, Muslim Conquests from the 7th to the 21st centuries. And the way they define jihad is, the book says that it's not an attempt to convert people to Islam by force. Rather, attempt to expand and extend Islam until the whole world is under Muslim rule. The jihad is essentially a permanent state of hostility that Islam maintains against the rest of the world, with or without fighting for more sovereignty over more territory. So it's a duty, it's an obligation of all Muslims. Is it radical? Well, like Al-Qaeda is defined as a radical Muslim movement. But sitting in Turkey as a secular Muslim, I would look at Al-Qaeda. I would not like what Al-Qaeda is doing because that's not my lifestyle. That's not the Turkish lifestyle. So most Turks would not support Al-Qaeda, and they would not like their actions. And most Turks do not know what the Quran's talking about. They have not read it. Most Muslims don't read the Quran. But Al-Qaeda is, I would say, is one of the closest groups to the Quran, application of the Quran in the 21st century.
So if you were going to truly live the Quran, Al-Qaeda would probably be not straying from that example, but following it most closely.
That's right, yes.
Just to reinforce my contention that ISIS is indeed Islamic, and it doesn't matter if they're killing other Muslims, listen to this from the Times of India newspaper. Actually, it's the internet edition. Whether a person is Shia or Sunni Muslim in Iraq can now be quite literally a matter of life and death. As the militant group, the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, has seized vast territories in western and northern Iraq, there have been frequent accounts of fighters capturing groups of people and releasing the Sunnis, while the Shias are singled out for execution. ISIS believes that the Shias are apostates and must die in order to forge a pure form of Islam. The two main branches of Islam diverge in their belief over who is the true inheritor of the mantle of the Prophet Muhammad. The Shias believe that Islam was transmitted through the household of the Prophet Muhammad. Sunnis believe that it comes down through the followers of the Prophet of Muhammad, who, they say, are his chosen people.
Hello, Bezel 333. I need to make a statement. I'm going to do it on my phone. This isn't my normal format. The Muslim understanding of the word jihad is basically expansion of Islam by whatever means possible. Most Muslims in America are liberal Muslims who, much like liberal Christians in the Bible, don't really believe or even know what it is that their Quran teaches. And I'm saddened by the words of our president who spoke last night, who seems to think in his mind just like a liberal Muslim. To say that the organization waging war in Iraq and Syria against non-Muslims and Muslims that believe differently than they do are not Islamic terrorists and murderers is simply false. The Quran teaches many passages that call for Muslims to jihad, to wage war with non-believers for the sake of Islamic expansion. And unlike the Old Testament passages where God commanded violence by his people that had to do with the conquest of Canaan at a particular time in history, and only that time, the passages that call for violence in the Quran are not limited by any historical event. To the Muslim, they are the never-changing word of Allah and have just as much relevance today as they did just years after the Quran was written down. Muhammad's own bloody hands and those of his cohorts, coupled with an overwhelming emphasis on violence that is within the Quran, leaves no doubt that ISIS is an Islamic terrorist organization far exceeding the men who planned and executed the 9/11 attacks on America in 2001. Some quotes, just a few from the Quran to try to make my point. Fighting is prescribed for you, and ye dislike it, but it is possible that ye dislike a thing which is good for you. In the Quran, I think it's chapter 3, soon we shall cast terror into the hearts of the unbelievers, for that they join companions with Allah, for which He has sent no authority. In chapter 2, and kill them wherever you find them, turn them out from where they have turned you out. Chapter 4, and be not weak-hearted in the pursuit of the enemy. If you suffer pain, then surely they too suffer pain as you do. In Quran chapter 2, the fight in the cause of Allah then fight in the cause of Allah and know that Allah hears and knows all things. I could go on and on, there's many of them. The leader of ISIS was quoted by CNS News in June of 2014 as saying this, "Our last message is to the Americans. Soon we will be in direct confrontation and the sons of Islam have prepared for such a day." Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Mr. President, you must call a spade. Not all religions are equal. These individuals are Islamic terrorists and barbaric thugs who take the Quran seriously. You do the United States of America no favor by refusing to call this group what they really are. They do not only want an Islamic State, which they are grabbing in Iraq and Syria. They want an Islamic world and will try to crush anyone who will not submit to Allah. And I implore you, Mr. President, reconsider your strategy in dealing with this heinous Islamic organization and be the leader of the free world that America needs right now.